Tibet Center, 151 West 30th Street, 3rd floor. So we'll begin by reciting the prayer for the spreading of the teachings throughout the length and breadth of the West. You'll find these prayers in the FAQ section if you scroll down on the Tibet Center's website. By the force of the
blessings of the non-fallacious three precious gems, and the truth of our pure selfless wishes, may the precious Buddhist teachings flourish and spread to the expanse of all areas throughout the length and breadth of the West. For all the people living there, together with their near ones, who are engaged in the teachings and have faith and respect for them, may all conditions adverse to their practice of the pure Dharma be dispelled, and an excellent collection of favorable conditions increase like the waxing moon. And especially for those who work on methods to accomplish the flourishing and spreading of the victorious one's teachings, which are a source of benefit and happiness, may they never be oppressed by masses of interference and adverse conditions, and may they spontaneously happen just as we have hoped and wished.
Sutra.
Thus as I heard once, the Blessed Ones dwelling in the royal domain of the Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a big gathering of great monks and great bodhisattvas. At that time the Blessed One entered the Samadhi, which examines the dharmas called profound illumination, and at the same time noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the profound practice of transcendent knowledge, saw the five skandhas and their natural entities. Then, through the inspiration of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to Avalokiteshvara, how should those noble ones learn who wish to follow the profound practice of transcendent knowledge? And Avalokiteshvara answered, Venerable Shariputra, whoever wishes to follow the profound practice of transcendent knowledge should look at it like this, seeing the five skandhas and their natural entities. Form is empty, emptiness itself is form. Emptiness is not separate from form. Form is not separate from emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discriminating awareness, oppositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Thus all the dharmas are empty and have no characteristics. They are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, since there is emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discriminating awareness, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no objects of mind, no quality of sight, no quality of hearing, no quality of smelling, no quality of tasting, no quality of sensing, no quality of thought, no quality of mind consciousness. There are no nidanas from ignorance to old age, nor death, nor their wearing out. There is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no ending of suffering, and no path, no wisdom, no attainment, no non-attainment. Therefore, since there is no attainment, the Bodhisattvas abide by means of transcendent knowledge, and since there is no obscurity of mind, they have no fear, they transcend falsity and pass beyond the bounds of sorrow. All the Buddhas who dwell in the past, present, and future, by means of transcendent knowledge, fully and clearly awakening to unsurpassed, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of transcendent knowledge, the mantra of deep insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra which calms all suffering should be known as truth, because there is no deception. In transcendent knowledge, the mantra is proclaimed. Jaya Om Gape Gape Para Gape Para Samgate Bodhisattva. O Shariputra, this is how Bodhisattva Mahasattva should learn profound transcendent knowledge. Then thus one rose from that samadhi and praised the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara, saying, Good, O son of a noble family, profound transcendent knowledge should be practiced just as you were taught, and the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara, that whole gathering in the world with its gods, humans, Asuras, and Gandharvas, their hearts full of joy, praise the words of the Blessed One.
Now we generate bodhicitta with the
Wish
wish
to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. With the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. With the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world.
Let's do a rosary of Om Mani Padme Hum. As you recite, develop the wish to remove the suffering of others. Om Mani Padme Hum. 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 So, we've been discussing Beyond Religion, Ethics for a Whole World by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And let us start on page 103. So we are we're discussing Beyond Religion. No So, page 103, for those who have the book.
Sure.
Ethical mindfulness in everyday life. So after His Holiness has taught us about how to cultivate compassion in order to make that the motivation with which we engage in life, with life, and taught us how to bring about an awareness, a discernment, so that we act upon that compassion skillfully in a constructive way. Now he's teaching us how to actually integrate it, these two qualities, compassion and skillful means into our daily lives. So ethics is not simply a matter of knowing. More important, it's about doing. For this reason, even the most sophisticated ethical understanding, if it is not applied in daily life, is somewhat pointless. Living ethically requires not only the conscious adoption of an ethical outlook, but also a commitment to developing and applying inner values in our daily lives. So this is a discussion group, and so I don't want to be here. What His Holiness has just said here, over the last few weeks we've been discussing the fact that it's rather difficult, unless we're engaged in working at the United Nations, which we happen to have two people here who do or have done. How do we, in our daily lives, actually impact our society in a constructive, compassionate, effective way?
Big question. It's a big question. I have a question. Maybe I could start the discussion by asking my question. We have what we call ethics. We have what we call morals. And I began to wonder to myself the other day about ethics and morals. And what I am wondering is, what kind of inspiration in our lifetime, how did we come across ethics? How did we find ethical behavior? And it seems that throughout the world, people's ethics are very similar in essence. So where did it come from? That was my question. Where did the whole idea of ethics come from that we try to live up to each day? How did it happen?
Darren, from the Catholic point of view?
American Catholics or the Catholics in general?
So, joking aside, I asked about the Catholic point of view because there is the belief that ethics come from God, that it is some kind of a holy inspiration that we receive by our Creator. What His Holiness is trying to introduce here is the idea that there is a natural quality to ethics, that there is or let's say, a logical validity in acting ethically. It helps you, it helps your society, it helps the world. It's a win-win proposition.
So in other words, it came out of a quest for maybe loving kindness from above and from us. Is that, is that?
Well, when you say it came from, what we're all actually discussing is how to bring it about. It's not that it's come, we have to make it.
But it exists, like ethics exists.
The idea exists, but it only exists if you, well,
Embrace
I don't know.
it.
What are your thoughts?
I think His Holiness says that it's an inborn, natural aspect of our minds. And it's more, we bring it about by uncovering it, by getting rid of the things which are not inherent to the mind.
Oh, tell me what is inherent.
Compassion.
It's inherent in the mind.
No. I know that's not a good word.
So, those are the two, and I'm not sure, though Mark is suggesting that His Holiness has talked about the fact that compassion is maybe a natural quality. And he's even proposed, and it's rather interesting, that in the survival of a species, in what is it called?
Natural selection.
Yeah,
Evolution.
Darwinian concept
Evolution.
of
Evolution.
natural
Survival.
selection, all of this, that compassion actually can be an ingredient of survival, that the quality of compassion and creating relationships within a community of whatever the species is can be a method of surviving. He's proposed that as something to seriously study scientifically, because survival of the fittest can also be seen to be free of anything like compassion. Compassion is the sort of, let's say, the sweet, nice stuff that you have to forego if you're going to survive. And he's saying, no, actually it can be an ingredient. So even ethics can be an ingredient in the survival of a community or of an individual.
Rules of the road for survival.
Yes, but in order for the rules of the road to be followed, they have to be recognized and accepted as being helpful. And so it's not that anyone comes along and says, it's that we have to recognize and apply them individually.
It's also a matter of group survival. I mean,
Yes.
for just one person to survive, compassion is not absolutely necessary. That's when the survival of the fittest, you might even want to be selfish. But if it's group survival, if you're in a group, and most species are in a group, I won't say that, okay, that's struck that. But if you're in a group, then for the group to survive, there has to be some kind of cooperation. Yeah? So you start with a cooperation, like for example, food sharing or something. Then if you're in a group, you develop relationships in the group. And then from there, it's just the next step to develop compassion, I think. I mean,
Well, when you say it's just the next step to develop compassion, here what we're working on is our own individual recognition of the value of compassion, which is what then...
Was it ethics or the question for that?
the
that's
question is ethics,
that's
but-
kind of related, isn't it? I mean, there's like the studies have been done in like groups of monkeys, like for example, where they see that the monkeys who share fruit, right, they kind of like cooperate and reciprocate and share. And then there are monkeys who don't share, and the other monkeys kind of shun them, right? So that's been proven quite a number of years. So even in a species like that, I mean, not human species, but at the same time, highly intelligent species, there's a thing such as that seems to be like very close to either ethics or at least fairness, if not ethics, at least fairness. The monkeys recognize it, that there's some monkeys who are fair and some monkeys who are not fair, right? So that's kind of group dynamics, yeah? So also there's some groups, there's studies where they've done like not all animals like abandon the sick and the old and the injured. There are some animals who would like look after them. So that's all kind of related. I think it's like that's how you. I mean, if in any kind of a group dynamic, you become close to some and than others, or at least siblings or whatever. And then if they're injured or if they're sick, then you give them food and stuff like that. I don't think it's just the human beings who do that.
So you asked,
No, it's just, you reminded me at a Mind and Life conference in 2005 or so, His Holiness was there. One man talked about bonobo monkeys.
Bonobo monkeys.
Bonobo monkeys
They're
and
very, very social.
And the ones that they choose for leaders are the ones who have compassion and who help others and who, I was stunned by that. It's apparently well known.
But there are other monkeys
Oh,
who
yeah.
believe
Oh yeah,
in
there are
free
other
will.
monkeys who are killed and,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
and also eat other little smaller monkeys.
Just like us,
So,
you know.
so yeah, so
There's
it's,
all kinds.
it's all group dynamics,
Yeah.
I think, yeah. Because it's learned behavior, yeah, whether it's like compassion or whether it's killing, it's learned behavior.
So getting back to your question about how did ethics come about?
mutual protection.
I'd like to bring it to how it comes about in each of us individually. I don't think that we can expect ourselves to be ethical. What we're talking about here is how to recognize the validity of ethics. And now where we're at is about how to actually develop it, how to bring it about within ourselves. Ethics, what His Holiness is suggesting here, is something that we have to train in, we have to
Well,
actually
it starts
cultivate.
parentally with people imbuing their children with what is and what isn't proper behavior in a family setting. And I think that then people are born, whatever their karma is, they're born with knowledge and remembrance, I would think. That if you remember an ethical life, you're more prone to have one now than not, I guess.
And in that sense, when we talk about the way karma works, any either ethical or unethical behavior we engage in becomes easier and easier. Not only does the instinct develop as we indulge the behavior, whether virtuous or non-virtuous, ethical or non-ethical, but the environment within which we find ourselves is more conducive to that behavior, so that our action is responsible for our future behavior, actions, but our action is also responsible for the situations that we find ourselves in. And that goes, for those of you who believe in past and future lives, that accompanies us. So one could say that ethics, what brings about ethics is how we behaved in the past.
It's possible. I would think so. But it's interesting, I mean, in my situation, just like a personal thing, that I engage in a certain form of what I considered to be ethical behavior. But the reward that came back to me over the years for having been lucky enough to spy that particular thing has been so monumental that I couldn't even dream of letting that thought that motivated me ever escape me, and I continue down that road. So I understand how it manifests in this life to make things better. The more you do something that is an ethical choice and it becomes part of your being, the grander, and it didn't start out to be grand, and it ended up being grand.
So one of the things that I began by saying to Lydia is that we have to recognize the logic of
the
an
behavior.
ethical
Yeah.
way.
Mm.
How do you feel about that? Do you think that's a necessity?
Take it out.
In terms of making sense, logic
Making sense to oneself,
to oneself and in the context of society.
in the context of society, but to oneself.
To oneself, absolutely.
Yeah, we're accepting that?
When I was given the precepts in Sri Lanka, the first time I encountered them, I told a Swiss friend, and she said, but shouldn't we all behave like that? The 5 Pratimokshas. And to her it was just like so natural. And she was Christian, Swiss, not Buddhist at all. She's Buddhist now, but not then. But she was like, but isn't that the way we should all behave?
Well, upbringing has so
Yeah.
much to do with it.
Yes.
And, I mean, you were referring
Yeah.
to.
And Switzerland is
His
very,
Holiness's, what do they call, Mind and Life conferences.
Yeah.
There was, I think I mentioned this, a Mind and Life conference on secular ethics, and these Canadian scientists and educators were talking about how they had integrated secular training into the school system something like 30-something years ago, and had been able to track the benefits
oh, good.
on students as they progressed and then went into the workforce. Someone asked, so when should one start this training? And one person said, oh, it has to be in kindergarten. And someone else said, oh no, it has to be in pre-kindergarten. Well, you know, it really should be when the child is tiny. And then someone said, actually, it's good to start when you're pregnant. So,
I seem to remember Tibetans would let children do whatever they wanted till they were about 3 years old, and then they would start saying yes and no. In the day, I'm
Well, it's
talking
by example.
back in Tibet.
It's by example.
It's by example, that's another thing, 'cause, you know, small.
and as a result of this,
And there was no media.
the Tibetan nannies in New York are the most sought after nannies.
Yes, they
because
are.
people recognize that they really have a good influence on little children.
Hmm?
Okay,
Interesting.
so ethics is not simply a matter of knowing, it's a matter of doing. We must work at figuring out how to integrate ethics into our lives. Now, regarding the question of how to put ethics into practice in everyday life, it may be helpful to consider the process as having three aspects or levels, each progressively more advanced and dependent for its success upon the former. As outlined in some classical Buddhist texts, these are as follows: an ethical restraint, which is the deliberate refrain from doing actual or potential harm to others. So restraint. An ethic of virtue, actively cultivating and enhancing our positive behavior and inner values. And the ethic of altruism, dedicating our lives genuinely and selflessly to the welfare of others. So, that's, so the ethic of restraint, well, what do you have to say on the ethic of restraint? Now, there are those who believe that who will say you have to let the child run free. Oh, you. Tibetans let their children run free.
I was told.
The ethics of restraint is not so much how you treat your children or it's how you restrain yourself from engaging in non-virtuous actions, speech, and thoughts. Deliberately refraining from doing actual or potential harm to others. And you can stretch, ethics can be, can go deeper into refraining from engaging in the kind of thoughts that can, let yourself get angry, let yourself even alone stew in angry thoughts. So
Well, there's no benefit from that. There's no benefit from stewing in angry thoughts.
no, but we all do it.
Well, so yeah, but sometimes we figure it out that, well, this is the way, this is the situation, and I have to accept it.
And this is making me miserable.
Mm.
You have to change yourself.
Yeah. So, but I'm saying that is part of the restraint. It's not simply a restraint in terms of harming others. It's also a self-harm
Yes.
that we have to.
Yes.
But first you have to recognize that it's wrong,
Or that it hurts.
and that it hurts. But first recognize that it's wrong. Because I've seen in my own mind, there's certain mental states that it took me a long time to realize, oh, this is wrong. I was just.
It's just
Ethics as we know it, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama teaches, has developed over the course of human development, not from on high, from the bottom up over thousands of years. Charlie Freeholm. I agree. And yes. And when you say ethics has developed over the course of human development, ethics is something that we have to develop over the course of our own development in this life in order to contribute to our future development. It's nice to know that the online community is.
It's a week.
Hello.
Well, I think you figure out that you benefit from restraint, and that reinforces a habit
Yes.
of exercising restraint.
So that's the I happen to think that what you just said, Leslie, is really the most important thing that we can do, and it's sort of the application of the logic. It's the understanding logically the benefits of doing that. And, you know, analytical meditation, which we consider to be the most important and effective aspect of meditation, is one in which we apply logic and work at seeing the validity of a certain way of doing things and the faults in engaging in those wrong ways of doing things, and thereby developing that habit, that muscle, that so seeing that, recognize and dwelling on it. It can't be just a momentary thought. We really have to work on it.
And act on it.
It is out of working on it that when we are confronted, we will act on it. The instinct has to be developed.
And the technique, reviewing the day, setting the motivation in the morning, how do you work on it?
Yeah.
You would say, I don't know.
Yes,
Yeah.
setting your motivation, but not just, we can't just set our motivation for the day. We have to actually recognize, for example, see the negative aspects of non-ethical behavior, unethical behavior, see the ugliness of anger, see the negative aspects of greed, dwell on those, and recognize even a person who acts generously, who seems to refrain from greed, and recognize the beauty of that, the happiness that that person seems to reflect, and really work at sort of molding ourselves in meditation before we start
Remember
our day.
Ricochet with the newspaper story, the faults of this, the benefits of that. You could read newspaper and meditate. Faults of who set his house on fire, who saved this, you know, things like that. Even reading newspaper. Even reading websites, I guess. I don't know what to make things.
So, an ethic of restraint, deliberately refraining from doing actual potential harm to others. An ethic of virtue, actively cultivating and enhancing our positive behavior and inner values. So, in both this actively cultivating, the cultivation has to be done by the actual engagement in the action, but it also has to be done by cultivating a recognition of the benefits of that way of behaving. And then an ethic of altruism, dedicating our lives genuinely and selflessly to the welfare of others. So to be effective, these three stages must be considered in relation to all our behavior. In other words, not just in relation to our outward physical actions, but also in relation to what we say and ultimately to our very thoughts and intentions. So that's not easy.
Form a good habit and stick to it. It has to be.
And Tony said the thoughts that we begin our day with, and then the thoughts that we end our day with. And those thoughts that we end our day with are really important, because if we set our motivation and if we dwell on the benefits of virtuous action and the faults of selfish actions, and we get ourselves all set at the beginning of the day, and then we go through our day and we're provoked and we may get angry once or twice, and we may sort of start to look on the internet for little objects of desire or whatever. And then if we just let it be and we go to sleep, we haven't really done the effective work that we must. Sitting down at the end of the day and going over our day and saying, I have to restrain myself from indulging in the way that I did. That's I can see how that pulled me away, wasted my time, was of no benefit, caused harm, made someone unhappy, whatever it is. Going over that at the end of the day is really important. That, as much as setting the motivation and getting ourselves ready is important, going over it all at the end of the day is really important.
I agree.
We have one vote here. Okay.
It's harmony.
So, and of these levels of behavior, body, speech, and mind, the most important is the mind as the source of everything we do and say. To concentrate our attention only on actions of body and speech would be like a doctor addressing only the symptoms of an illness rather than its underlying cause. For treatment to be effective, it must also address the source of the problem. In view of this, the final 3 chapters are all primarily concerned with training the mind. But before moving on to the subject of educating the heart through training the mind, I would like first to say a few words about the importance of abandoning destructive habits of body and speech, as it is this which constitutes the first stage in the practice of ethics. So, ethics of restraint. Restraint, virtue, and altruism. The first is the ethics of restraint. Regarding certain kinds of obviously harmful behavior, all the world's major faiths and the humanistic traditions converge. Murder, theft, inappropriate sexual conduct such as sexual exploitation are by definition harmful to others. So of course they should be abandoned. But the ethic of restraint calls for more than that. Before we can contemplate actively benefiting others, we must first of all ensure that we do them no harm, even by our actions which are not immediately violent. With regard to this principle of doing no harm, I'm particularly impressed and humbled by my brothers and sisters in the Jain tradition. Jainism, which is something like a twin religion to Buddhism, places great emphasis on the virtue of non-violence, or ahimsa, toward all beings. For example, Jain monks go to great lengths to ensure that they do not accidentally tread on insects or harm other living beings in their everyday activities. So when you live in India, you sometimes see Jain monks moving around, traveling, and they often will not travel in vehicles. They'll walk, and they'll walk along the highway, along the side, and they'll be barefoot. You have those very, very strict Jain monks who won't wear any clothes. They don't want to use cotton because cotton is a great many insects are killed in the growing of cotton. So they don't wear cotton. Some of them have a gauze of some sort over their mouths so they don't breathe in insects. And the strict monks who are not wearing anything there will be a disciple walking in front of him, sweeping the ground before him to remove any insects that he might step on. And you know, you go by on the bus or whatever, and you see this little community, the people who revere the holy monk will be walking along with him, probably stepping on insects. And someone is sweeping the way before them. They are, I remember, Tibetans are good Buddhists, but they are carnivores for the most part. There are, His Holiness has worked to cultivate vegetarianism, especially in the monasteries, but Tibetans do like meat. And I remember when I went to live in the south of India, the person from whom the monastery bought rations, rice and dal and things like that, was a Jain. And one day he took me aside and said, you're Buddhists. You're like us Jains. How can these people eat meat? And I explained that we try not to kill. As monks, we're meant to eat what is served to us. And if someone is going to kill in order to serve us, we should say no. We should prevent people from killing for us. But if we go to someone's house and they have cooked something that includes meat and they serve us, we should eat what is presented to us. He didn't really like that argument, but I think it's inspiring that this community is really devoted to refraining from killing or causing harm to other beings. And when His Holiness says that the sort of brother religions, the establisher of the Jains, Mahavir, and the Buddha were contemporaries, and they both came from the same part of the northeast of India. And I don't know that they ever met. Mahavir was a bit older than the Buddha, but there was definitely a source, or there was they had many similar attitudes, and they also neither believed in God, a creator being. They both believe in the past lives and the actions in our past lives that are what result in us today. So that's the Jains. However, the exemplary behavior of Jain monks and nuns is hard for all of us to emulate, even for those whose circle of primary concern is restricted to humanity rather than encompassing all sentient beings. It can be very hard not to contribute to harming others through our actions in indirect ways. Consider, for example, how rivers come to be polluted, perhaps by mining companies extracting minerals, or industrial plants producing components that are crucial to the technologies we use on a daily basis. Every user of those technologies thereby is partly responsible for the pollution and thus contributes negatively to the lives of others. How do you feel about that? Unfortunately, it is perfectly possible to harm others indirectly through our actions without any intention of doing so. So, when I say how do you feel about that, how do we deal with the fact that so much of what we do, we carry around cell phones that are full of ingredients, components that cause enormous harm to the planet, to others that are poisonous in all sorts of ways, and yet it's essential for us to be plugged in. So what do we do?
Moderate your use.
But do you think less use of the phone that you possess diminishes the...
What's your mind? Because most of the things on the phone we possess is becoming morphing into television mentality. So the little advertisements with this that interrupt everything. So that's one thing, but it's hard to ignore. The pollution
To
can
try
create
by
just
not
minus
being able to do some things to excess.
What?
So that's what he said.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, well, you couldn't, the fire engine was.
Okay,
So
sorry.
my question was, does diminishing our use of phones contribute to diminishing the effect of the poisons that are in them?
There's only one thing that, according to the teachings, diminishes it, and it's waking up. And when you're awake, you may not use a phone. You may say, no more. So the idea,
Metaphorically waking.
pardon me?
Not walking.
I
Not the
Metaphorically,
opposite of sleep, yeah.
metaphorically,
Not
yes.
the opposite of sleep.
And
Sorry,
you
I
don't-
can't hear you.
And you don't always have to have the next generation of the phone. Because they're always coming up with the next generation. It's up to iPhone 16 now, right? I'm still sticking with my iPhone 7. So even though the iPhone 16 looks really good, but you know, you don't have
No, just
to always, you
buy
don't
sandwich.
always have to get one model after the newest model, the newer model, the better one, blah, blah, blah. So I think that's restraining from greed and also unnecessary consumption. All that we can do in this modern life is to consume less. That's all we can do, basically, because as long as we're in society, especially in the West, we're a consumer society. So it's just consume less. It's
So that
kind
is
of almost like a revolutionary act, yeah? Because with all those advertising and everything, every time you turn on the TV, there's an iPhone 16 staring at you. Right?
I can see that the iPhone 16 was tickling my
I have been resisting it, and I'm going to keep with my iPhone 7 until that thing dies. So, yeah.
We can recycle our old computers. Yesterday I was on the phone with Apple and I have an old iMac. And I asked them, can I bring it in to recycle? And they said, yes, I would reuse the parts.
At the Apple store?
At the Apple store.
Yeah, I have an old.
So it's not a lot, but it's something.
And you can put in a new battery for $80, which I'm gonna do.
I don't know about for phone companies, but in general, I think there's companies who are making efforts to be mindful of these things and
Good.
reduce the harm
Good.
that they're doing in the production. But you have to do a bit of
Good.
research and effort for that.
So, what the research and effort we do individually
Yeah.
is a contribution.
Yes.
The determination to refrain from buying the latest in order to help the planet in some way. And all of those thoughts are, I think, grow out of a greater ethical awareness.
No, it's called to build our character. Got to have an instinct. The little things can.
Because just before the next phone comes out, you can see like a huge line around the block
Oh, yeah,
at
that's
the Apple
right.
store.
Really?
For the next phone, they're all online for hours on it. Some people are there for 5 hours.
See lines
Get
at
the
Google
next
Lemon
one.
in the mall.
Get on
Why?
all
How
of
do
it.
you- how do you
And
know
Shirt
that's not-
something comes out.
Because I'm not on that line. I refuse to be online, even for food, never mind the phone. So,
Black Friday.
So as Olin says, so realistically, I think the most important thing we can all do is to minimize the harm we inflict in our everyday lives. Oh, sorry. I think the most important thing we can all do to minimize the harm we inflict in our everyday lives is to apply discernment in our behavior and to follow that natural sense of conscientiousness which arises from the enhanced awareness that discernment brings us.
It's the ways to be.
So this is not about what we're doing out there, it's all about developing our
Enhance the way.
I can add one more thing is, if we try to buy from companies that are more locally based, then there's not going to be as much of the extensive supply chain that happens with these international things. So there's going to be less effect on the planet when we are purchasing from local
We
companies.
just made Shake Shack and the table said, made from sustainable white oak
Mm-hmm.
in America. So right on the table, they burned that in.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some sort of consciousness raising here. The hamburger was also made of white oak. No.
I also want to say, like, you can think of, like, stuff I want. You can say, do I need? Not only, like, phones, but clothes, food, accessories, whatever, right? Do I really need it? Or I just want it in order to reduce?
Yes. Seeing things as tools, and using them not out of desire, but out of the need to use them, changes the dynamic, changes our relationship to the things we use.
Yeah, and the last reason to show off. Assuming that I have this, that I don't have. And that's a big thing. You should be the first to get, Oh, blah, blah, blah.
But no, I do think that the iPhone 16 is probably a lot better than the camera.
The camera.
Oh, there you go.
It's what you focus on.
It's the ability to focus, which is
And the automatic light meter, I like that.
actually, you pay more for a manual light meter.
Really?
The ability to
Oh, to really fine tune it.
So, thank you. I enjoyed that. And, I think we really have to think, these discussions that we're having are the analytical meditation, are the method, these thoughts, and bouncing these ideas off each other together, are the ways by which we develop that little inner muscle that helps us refrain from develop an awareness of, be more mindfulness of the decisions that we make. So thank you.
Okay.
Today is the 20.
Any names there?
No names.
Names.
So, we shall recite the Sutra of the Recollection of the Noble Three Jewels. I prostrate to the Omniscient One, thus
the
Bhagavad
Buddha, Bhagavad, Sambuddha, the learned and virtuous one, the Sugata, the knower of the world, the charioteer and tamer of beings, the unsurpassable one, the teacher of devas and humans, the Buddha Bhagavad. The Tathagata is an affordable long merit. He does not waste the roots of virtue. He is completely ornamented with all patience. He is the basis of the treasures of merit. He is adorned with divine marks. He blossoms with flowers of major months. His activity is timely and appropriate. Seeing him, he is without disharmony. He brings true joy to those who long with faith. His knowledge cannot be overpowered. His strength cannot be challenged. He is the teacher of all sentient beings. He is the father of bodhisattvas. He is the king of noble ones. He is the guide of those who journey to the city of Nirvana. He possesses immeasurable wisdom. He possesses inconceivable confidence. His speech is completely pure. His melody is pleasing. One never has the chance of seeing him. His form is incomparable. He is not stained by the realm of desire. He is not stained by the realm of form. He is not affected by the formless realm. He is completely liberated from suffering. He is completely and utterly liberated from the skandhas. He is not possessed with dhatus. His ayatanas are controllable. He has completely cut the knots. He is not possessed with dukkha. He is liberated from greed. He is crossed the river. He is perfected in all the wisdoms. He abides in the wisdom of the Buddha Bhagavats who arise in the past, present, and future. He does not abide in nirvana. He abides in the ultimate perfection. He dwells on the Bhumi where he sees all sentient beings. All these are the perfect virtues of the greatness of the Buddha Bhagavat. The holy Dharma is good at the beginning, good at the middle, and good at the end. Its meaning is excellent. Its words are excellent. It is uncorrupted. It is completely perfect and completely pure. It completely purifies. The Bhagavad teaches the Dharma well. It brings complete vision. It is free from sickness. It is always timely. It directs one further. Seeing it fulfills one's purpose. It brings discriminating insight for the wise. The Dharma which is taught by the Bhagavad is revealed properly in the Vinaya. It is renunciation. It causes one to arrive at perfect enlightenment. It is without contradiction. It is pithy. It is trustworthy and puts an end to the journey. As the Sangha of the great Yana, they enter completely. They enter excitedly. They enter straightforwardly. They enter harmoniously. They are worthy of veneration for joining alms. They are worthy of receiving prostration. They are a field of glorious merit. They are completely capable of receiving all gifts. They are an object of generosity. They are a great object of complete generosity. The protector who possesses great kindness, the omniscient teacher, the basis of the oceans of merit and virtue, I prostrate to the Tathagata. You are the cause of freedom from passion, virtuous, liberated from the lower realms. This alone is the supreme ultimate truth. I prostrate to the Dharma which is peace. Having been liberated, they show the path to liberation. They are fully dedicated to the disciplines. They are a holy field of merit and possess virtue. I prostrate to the Sangha. I prostrate to the Buddha, the leader. I prostrate to the Dharma, the protector. I prostrate to the Sangha, the community. I prostrate respectfully and always to these three. The Buddha's virtues are inconceivable. The Dharma's virtues are inconceivable. The Sangha's virtues are inconceivable. Having faith in these inconceivables, therefore the fruitions are inconceivable. May they be born in a completely pure realm.
With the determination
To accomplish the highest welfare of all sentient beings, surpass even a wish-granting jewel, I will learn to hold them supremely dear. Whenever I associate with others, I will learn to think of myself as the lowest amongst all, and I respectfully hold others to be supreme from the very depths of my heart. In all actions, I will learn to search into my mind, and as soon as a disturbing emotion arises, endangering myself and others, I will firmly face and avert it. I will learn to cherish ill-natured beings and those oppressed by strong misdeeds and sufferings, as if I had found a precious treasure difficult to find. When others out of jealousy treat me badly, with abuse, slander, and so on, I will learn to take all loss and offer victory to them. When the one who might have benefited with great hope unreasonably hurts me very badly, I will learn to do that person as an excellent spiritual guide. In short, I will learn to offer to everyone without exception all help and happiness directly and indirectly, and respectfully take upon myself all undefiled by the stains of being worldly concerns, and by understanding all phenomena as like illusions, be released from the bondage of attachment.
Now a prayer for the swift return. Exalt the wisdom of all
Victors gathered in a drop, sole refuge manifest in the form of one wearing saffron robes, rule of Santo Juan Dojichan. Please bear witness here today that our prayers may be fulfilled. We beseech the great torch doctrine, accomplishing from long ago the vast waves of aspirational prayers. Lord, as teach the Victor Losang's teachings, spreading them to the ends of the earth by means of explanation and practice. Holding the commitment, I will invite all beings to be my guests in satisfactory awakening, yet doing withdrawn the activities of the form body that serves the welfare of our lives. Is that worthy of the supreme among beings, the Bodhisattvas? Though impossible for you till cyclic existence end, to abandon your commitment to liberate all beings, we beseech the new son of Nirmanakaya to swiftly return from the realm of Dharmakaya, brought forth by Bodhicitta drawn by 7 steeds. Having reached the far limits of scholarship, religious life, and goodness, please come swiftly as an unrivaled supreme emanation, full older of the sage's teachings, which from the golden jewel, return as the glory of Losang Tenpai. Bring the truth of the 3 precious jewels, Mahakala, Kammayama, and Srimati Devi, and the ocean of Dharma protectors, may spontaneously fulfill our wish, the swift blossoming of the reincarnation's fresh moonlight face.
Thanks, Jackie. Thank you very much. Most important.